one more minute. We'll wait one more minute and then we'll get started. All right, well, welcome everyone. As I said, it's good to see you. We're going to begin our roster ministers call. Thank you for your weekly check-in here. I think it's really helpful. It's helpful for me to see you. I feel connected to you in this way, and I hear back from you that it's helpful for you as well. So I'm grateful for that. At the end of this meeting, if I forget, maybe you can help me remember. I want to ask you what other kinds of topics will be useful for us to address here in this forum. So we're going to start with a brief devotion, and I have a rather maybe unorthodox devotion to share. I guess we'll see. But it begins with a song. Any children of the 70s here? So this will be familiar to you. This is a little bit different tone than our last time we got together here. Let me just get over here. Oh, you gotta stop it because gotta do that over. One more try. Gotta make sure and share the sound. All right, here we go. All right, so the song makes the appeal, somebody help us. So that sort of begs for Psalm 121. So that will be our actual opening devotion. So here we go. I lift up my eyes to the Lord will not let your foot be moved, nor will the one who watches over you fall asleep. Behold, the keeper of Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord watches over you. The Lord is your shade at your right hand. The sun will not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will preserve you from all evil. The Lord will keep your life. The Lord will watch over your going out and your coming in from this time forth and forevermore. I'll read that last line one more time. The Lord will watch over your going out and your coming in from this time forth and forevermore. Let us pray. O God, maker of heaven and earth, you are help in times of distress, and you watch over us day and night. Hold us securely in your mercy, that in the middle of fear and danger, we may depend on you, our sure deliverer. Through Jesus Christ, our Savior and Lord. Amen.
Amen.
So I thought we might begin by asking, where are you finding help these days? What has been a source of help or support or encouragement for you in these days?
I got a care package
Nice. Let's see it.
from somebody in my congregation, one of the confirmation families. And of course, included toilet paper, Kleenexes, little bottle of Purell. I don't know how they came up with that.
Wow. You know, that's contraband.
Well, it is. Soap. Whoops.
Nice.
Soap. Wash my hands.
Not at
And
all.
I will reveal
Food.
chocolate covered peanuts.
Uh,
And then breath mints. I don't know why, because I'm not with anybody, other than you can't tell, can you, when I'm on here? But
Nice.
so anyway, that was a really nice thing. Obviously, people are supportive, but
Thanks, Wade.
they dropped it off. Yep.
You know, I live, some of you know, we moved into a new home here on Pickerel Lake near Detroit Lakes, and we're hoping to heat the house with wood this winter, which means, as you know, the work is happening now to gather firewood. And that has been a great source of help to me in terms of splitting firewood is a great way to alleviate stress. I'll just put that out there.
Yeah.
What else? What's been helpful?
I don't know how we get tuned in. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Anderson Funeral Home in Twin Valley and Mahnomen sent area pastors face masks.
Oh, wow.
And I
That's
have a
nice.
burial tomorrow, so I can use one.
Good for you. That's great. By the way, just if you happen to be joining us by phone, which I see at least one person, maybe more, if you want to mute yourself, use *6 is the way to unmute yourself, I should say. Otherwise, you're all automatically muted when you come in. So if you want to speak, you got to unmute yourself. What else? One more way in which you're feeling a sense of help. What's
This
been
is
helpful?
Mary Gilfett from Zion and War Road. I'm appreciating the Joe Bible study on Monday mornings.
Good.
with
That's good.
Bishop
I am too. Thank you. We've been a small but mighty group. And if you want to catch up on that, there's recordings of it on our website, I believe. And you can join in anytime. Each study is pretty singular in itself. And we're using the resource, The Color of the Night, which is just a gorgeous book by Gerhard Frost. One of the other Frost poets that I really appreciate. All right. Well, I wanted to run through what we want to talk about today. I want to have Chris give a recap of resources. I'm going to ask Keith to give us a mission support report. I want to share with you about an idea that has emerged around online boundary training just today from Pastor Aaron Sumila Folkerts, Reverend Doctor, I should say. We're going to hear from John Dahl and Nolan Weiss about some resources from Red River Leadership that we think may be useful to you. I want to talk just about the stuff of daily life and ministry and how you're feeling supported or not. And specifically around what does time off look like at this particular time. We'll touch base on the PPG. We'll hear from various staff briefly around the horn. I'll ask you what future topics would be useful, and believe it or not, I believe there'll still be 15 minutes to take any questions at that point. So let's just jump right in. Chris.
Hello, everyone. I want to share with you some resources on our website. So here's our handy dandy landing page. Coming up this next week, we'll have a couple other banners rolling, but right now it's still just that COVID-19 resource page. And I did a little bit of rearranging. Currently, the payroll protection program is out of money, and Bishop Bill will speak to that a little bit, but the information is still on the site. It's just not front and center. Up top is some resources that I know some of you guys use on Sunday, but a couple ones I wanted to lift up is we have our guidance for baptism, wedding, and funerals on here. And again, this is guidance to help you and your congregation, not mandates, but some helpful information for you to start that conversation around how to handle baptisms, weddings, and funerals. And then this draft, it's still in draft form, and again, not a mandate, but really good things for you as your congregation to think about if there's a surge in your community that you serve. And then last week, Pastor Hope Deutscher from Grand Park Rolog and Living Grace talked about a sick leave policy, and she shared that with us. And so that's on here, and it is a good resource for you guys to kind of use if you want and need to have that. One thing that Pastor Keith is going to talk about, but I'm really excited about this cultivating generosity in the time of COVID-19. It's this Thursday night. You don't need to register, but the information's on Facebook and in your Northern Lights and on the website. So it's going to be really worth your while to check that out on Thursday night. John and Nolan will speak to Red River Leadership. We have a direct link to their stuff on our social media. So that's kind of the new stuff. Please look at your Northern Lights. It will come out tomorrow. There's resources that I put on there every week, a different one, free resources, ELCA resources, and more information. And so just take some time and look at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks for your work. Keith, Pastor Keith, Mission Support Report.
Mute myself here. Yes, indeed. Years ago, there were those of us on this Zoom call that remember our Synod campaign on malaria. And we set an aggressive goal. It kind of, some likened it to a moonshot, and we overshot the moon. It was an incredible experience that we experienced together across the Synod. And the takeaway, a major takeaway from that was not so much focusing on the dollars rate, the set amount of money, but it was after participation, that everybody had something to offer, a difference maker, and was focusing on getting involvement and participation. Where I'm going with this is that we have such generosity in participation within our Synod. When we ended 2019, we had over 90% of our 223 congregations that willingly shared financial support and gave it away for the sake of ministry and mission beyond the congregation that we all share in as a Synod, then as a whole church across this country, and that also includes global ministry as well. And that is being realized yet today in this challenging time. We're needing to pay all the more attention to physical health, community health in a variety of ways, but also financial health as best as we are able in this turbulent time. And the offerings, the sharing of mission support arrives almost on a daily basis. The participation is good. There are some congregations that are having to modify what they had been giving in terms of figuring out where they're at and where things might go, but they're still participating. We've had congregations that have ratcheted up a little bit in knowing that we're all in this together. We are connected in the body of Christ, and they just know that there's going to be different experiences for different congregations. But again, the bottom line is that we're all in this together. And I can tell you it's very gratifying. And And that leads me to tell you this. 2 weeks ago, well, a little over 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago yesterday, the 6th of April, I shared with you where we were at that moment of time. We compared January or April 6, 2020 with where we were April 6 in 2019. We were at an 8.5% decline, given that snapshot in time. I'm here to tell you, as of yesterday, our giving level as of yesterday compared to a year ago to the same day, we've shrunk the decline to 2.2%. Now, I think I scared some presidents yesterday on the conference call last night, the Zoom call, because I told them that in Moorhead, Minnesota, there's a strange thing we're doing, some of us. It's howling at 8 o'clock every evening in appreciation for those that are on the front line, those who are caring for the sick, who are in the hospitals, first responders, so on and so forth. And I've joined the howling, to my wife's chagrin, just a couple of times. And I was so tempted to howl praise and thanksgiving to God for the giving and the generosity and how we're moving forward. Now, I say that mindful that we as Synod together are knowing that it's going to be a mixed bag within each congregation and within our congregations, and we're wanting to be attentive together in whatever ways we can come alongside through resources, people resources, through different kinds of trainings and different kinds of other resources, how we can show up. And then that just leads me to just highlight again, thank you, Chris, for getting this invitation out, both by email and Northern Lights and such. But tomorrow night or Thursday night at 7 o'clock, Pastor Larry Stringy, who is our ELCA Cultivating Generous Congregations Coordinator, is offering a free 75-minute workshop, again, using Zoom. He's going to engage us in a conversation around the topic of cultivating generosity in the time of the COVID-19 pandemic. The focus of the workshop is to encourage and equip us to view money conversations as an opportunity for pastoral care and to deepen generosity as discipleship practice. So I'm glad for that opportunity. It will be recorded and made available as a part of our ongoing resourcing in this regard. We know that stewardship is holistic. It's everything that we've been entrusted with in God's creation. But it makes sense that we're being attentive, especially to the financial stewardship as disciples of Jesus Christ. That's my report. And even though I'm tempted to howl, I'm going to just say a thanks be to God.
It would be okay if you wanted to howl. We'd probably kind of. I think we'd kind of.
All right.
Thanks, Keith. I just want to express my gratitude for your continued work and the ways in which you're finding to keep people connected spiritually and to share the good news about Jesus Christ and to invite people's faith response. And of course, one of those ways that we respond is with the faith practice of generosity. And we're hearing just amazing stories of how God is continuing to enable people to give in spite of the challenges. And that's showing up. When we rolled into April, we kind of dropped off a cliff in terms of mission support. And we took a deep breath, like a lot of you did, held back on some expenditures. And then all of a sudden, it's like we regained our breath, we regained our courage, and came, what is in the parable, the prodigal, came to ourselves and said, all right, let's continue to do what it is we do as God's people. And so we have resumed all of our commitments, and we'll continue and we'll do that in earnest, especially to come out of our upcoming Synod Council meeting and some decisions that'll be made there. But thank you so much for your good work and generosity. So I know that here's a reality. When we come together like this, we share, sometimes we'll share a best practice or something we feel good about. And sometimes I know, well, I'll just speak for myself. I hear that what's going on. I think, man, I wish I knew how to do that, and I think I wouldn't be surprised if that reaction is out there on others' parts too, that we're not all good at the same stuff. And this time is calling out a certain set of gifts that that we're not necessarily all in possession of. So we're all in learning mode, we're all adapting, and we're doing the best we can. Wanted to provide you with some ways to possibly make some things a little easier, especially around those of you who are struggling to provide virtual or online worship experiences or video worship. And so we have partnered with Red River Worship to create with John Dahl and Nolan Weiss, Red River Leadership, which is a collaboration of several synods in our region. I would say the ODA synods, the Prairie synods of Minnesota and the North Dakota and South Dakota synods, to provide some resources to specifically rural congregations around creative, imaginative worship experiences. So I'm just going to turn it over to John and Nolan and let them speak a little bit. And John and Nolan, I'm going to make it possible for you to share your screen if you'd like. Okay. So that's possible now.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all for having us on today. Thank you, Bill, for bringing us on. We're in some crazy times. We're in just some scary, unprecedented times, and it's kind of forced us all to go, all right, what are the best ways forward? What tools can we use that don't cost a lot of money or any at all? So we really started getting serious about how can we do the best with what we already have. So that's kind of what led us to this first of many video trainings that we put out. We have a lot more that we're currently working on right now, but we thought getting a video series out about using video technology. Can you see my screen? Did that come through okay?
Yes.
Okay. So getting a video series out that uses the tools that we already have at our homes, most of us anyways, and if we don't, I have links in here for where to kind of find some cost-effective tools that you can start using. So the link for this, I'll provide it here in the chat as we go, but it's also, like Chris said, right on the Synod website. Thanks for posting it there, Chris. So anything from using your phones and tablets that you already have to using tripods, how to dial in your audio, lighting, some other visual tips. So I encourage you just to kind of roll through this video series at your own pace. Click on the links that you have available to you there. Send us any questions that you have, and we have some extended resources. So for instance, editing has become, personally, I think the most time-consuming piece of this whole online worship. Yes, it's taking the time to frame in a nice shot well, which I do talk about in this video series, but then what do you do with it once you're done shooting it and creating it? So what we decided to do was offer up video editing support, and that's also through us, just kind of taking those next steps to getting your worship online in the best ways that you can. So the way that we've kind of gone about doing that is that you guys shoot the videos yourselves using that 11 video series, walking through that, sending us emails, talking with us through that process. We'll help you through that, some best practices. And then we will set up a way for you to send us those videos. We put them all together for you. And then we just send it back to you and show you how to get them uploaded on whatever platform you're on. So if you're using Facebook, we'll talk you through the kind of the best practices of how to get it on Facebook right now, YouTube, Vimeo, so on and so forth. If you already have platforms started as a church, we'll work with whatever you've got, and we'll help you kind of get to the next level there if we can. And if you don't have anything started right now, that's totally okay, and we'll help you get started and kind of find the best ways to do that.
John, I'm going to take along on that. My name's Nolan. Good to see you guys all. There's kind of two options right now or two main options right now as far as streaming and getting your worships online. One of them is you have something or a couple different cameras in front of you and you do it live on the spot. And what he's talking about with the editing is that you can actually send us the raw clips and audio and whatever, and then it still goes out as live, but it's already pre-done. So we can clean it up a little bit, make sure the audio matches, add in some media, words to the hymns or whatever you're singing at the time. So that's just in case there was a little, in case we got lost in translation there. There's kind of two options: live on the spot, you can't change anything, or where we can actually clean it up and help you with that. Go ahead, John, sorry.
No, you're good. Our number one goal, all of our number one goals right now are creating worship experiences online. It's what we have to offer up in one way or another. And not only worship experiences, but just ways to connect with our church. And whether that's using the internet, phone calls, there's many ways to do it, but we really want to help and provide resources to getting that worship experience online, because who knows what things are going to look like after all of this. We keep saying, there's people saying it's going to snap back to normal, and there's people saying, no, this is the new normal. So trying to figure out, okay, what are the things we want to spend our focus on right now, but also what are the things that we need to carry through right now into whatever happens next, whatever the next phase is for church ministry.
Yeah, and as like John said with the editing, I've been working with a small church in North Dakota, and they came to me, it's a pastor friend of mine who they had no idea what to do. They're just lost. She called me in tears. And so she sent me what she recorded on her phone. I put it together. I put up the lyrics. I did the music for that one as well. But what's neat about that is each step along the way, I would show her, this is how I did it, so that not only were we able to help them get content out in the emergency that she had the day before Sunday church, but also she was able to learn and teach her people how to do that moving forward, so that it was something that she could take. And I talked about this on the call with presidents yesterday, but I'm at Calvary Lutheran in Alexandria, and this past Sunday we had several people that commented on our live stream, 2 families of which had quit going to church in their youth, one in confirmation, 8th grade, the other in high school, because of hurt relationships or whatever it was. And then I just found out, I'm actually on my staff Zoom meeting right now too. But we just heard from somebody else, a family who's never, ever, ever been connected to a church ever. And they are now watching online with us. And so these times are crazy. It is scary. It is a lot of work, but what a gift that we have, that we can be light and we can connect with people who would not before step into a church building, but now we can go to their house, to their couch, cuddled up with their dog and worship together. And so this is just like Paul, the Apostle Paul, used the tools of his time to get the message of Christ and his love for us across. Now we have the opportunity to go to the people. And so we're just excited that we can help you guys and partner in this ministry together. So I hope that you'll use us and ask questions and challenge us. We want to learn how to do this together too. If there's something that we haven't come up with, that we can figure it out together and be the light. So
thanks you guys. These folks are such a gift to our synod and really the region, and I'm grateful for the leadership that you provide. So thank you so much, John and Nolan. I want to say, there's some cost involved for the video editing. I don't think it's a great deal of cost. I think it's very affordable. If your congregation would need just a small encouragement grant to be able to even think about doing this, please don't hesitate to reach out to the synod. We feel like we can provide sometimes for your leaders and decision makers around money matters. It just takes a little bit of an encouragement to know that there's something out there. And don't forget about the Thrivent grants. Yes, too. That's a great use for your Thrivent grants, and you could have a lot of those for that purpose in your congregation. So thanks you guys. Let's see. So I wanted to talk about, one of the questions that I continue to throw out to our presidents and the president's calls, how they're supporting the rostered ministers in their congregations. And I will tell you that the first time that I asked that question, we got a lot of blank stares, right? And that's evolving. I think that one of the things that we're aware of as a Synod staff and that we're hearing is, I mean, first of all, what we can see. We can see that you, in your work, are engaged, you're being creative and adaptive. Everyone is doing something. You know, we're not all good at the same things, but everyone is trying to do something in some way to live into this call we have and to keep people connected spiritually and keep sharing the Word of God. And so, but I'm also aware that people are weary, right? And it's a different kind of weariness. I experience it myself. And I think in the congregational setting, I can imagine that it's exacerbated even more. Everything that we try to do, sermons, worship, confirmation, pastoral care, weddings, they all take so much more time, not so much the travel and, you know, all of that we can't do, but all the headspace, all the stuff going on between our ears, all the energy it takes to figure out how to do stuff. And it seems like, you know, everything we do just takes longer. I remember how tired I was at the end of each day when we were moving in, not because I personally was lifting and carrying that much stuff, but because I was constantly trying to figure out where stuff goes and how we put it together. It just makes you weary. And every day is like that for us. So I want to just acknowledge that that's the truth. That is the reality. Everything takes an order of magnitude that's 5 or 10 times longer to do. And it's just hard, and sometimes we deal with the frustration of just not being able to do it. So, and that leads to weariness. So that begs the question about time off. You know, what does time off look like when you're under a stay-at-home order? I know how this looks to some of our lay leaders. I remember when I was in my last parish, one of our worship leaders, the lead singer in one of our praise groups, was also the news anchor for the local TV station. And she used to joke that I only work at 3 hours a week, you know, for 3 worship services on a Sunday morning. And I would joke right back to, well, you only work 20 minutes a day. So, you know, we're even. But we both knew that was a joke, right? And that there was a whole lot that was behind that the people don't see. But I know we deal with that anyway. And now it feels maybe even a little exacerbated given this, that we're living under this stay-at-home order. And so I'm aware that we can some maybe even feel defensive about that, and that we may often feel like we have to justify ourselves or interpret what we're doing to our leaders. And then comes the reality of just being weary and needing time off. And what does that look like when you're already at home anyway? So I just want to say, you know, if you need some cover, if you need, we have your back. You know, if you need us to help have a conversation with leadership around getting you the space you need, because I suspect that what time off looks like, and you really should be taking at least one full Sabbath day each week, at least, preferably 1.5 or 2, but you should at least be taking one. And so now you probably hear that as another thing you have to do, and I don't want you to hear it that way, but give yourself that space to breathe. And it's going to look different for all of us. For me, I understand that it looks like having, you know, just not engaging with these, with media, not engaging, not answering phone calls. I think I'm going to have an outgoing message that says, today's my Sabbath. I'll be calling you back tomorrow. If it's an emergency, call this number. So I would just invite your comments or thoughts.
Bishop Bill, I think the struggle for me with it is that I have to take time away from work to teach my kids.
Mm-hmm.
And so then that's, 3-4 hours a week that I have to fit in others, so then I end up working on my Sabbath day because I've taken time to teach my kids at school. And I know many other people are in that same boat.
Yeah. I wonder what it's like to visit with your leadership about that reality. And if we looked into the promises we make at installation, if there would be something in there that would, wish I had them right here, but there's something, but the promises around modeling a life that is holy and good isn't about working ourselves to death, and it isn't about sacrificing one vocation for the sake of another vocation, right? So, I think the Benedictines who embrace this life of balance have a pretty good bead on that. But yeah, I hear you. I still think it's okay for you to do that and take the time. I will say that, and I'll say that to your leadership too, if it needs to be said.
Bill, one of the things that I did that was really helpful and actually pretty easy was I was taking Fridays off, and then we were having worship on Sunday. So if there wasn't anything on the schedule, I'd have Friday, Saturday.
Yep.
Well, now we're recording worship on Saturday morning. So Friday has really become a work day. And so I talked with our congregational president and I said, hey, can I take Mondays off until this all lifts? He said, sure, no problem. And so now we get done recording on Saturday at noon, and Sunday, Monday is my weekend. And that was really helpful for me, and others might have to look at that too. Thanks.
I just had that revelation this morning. You're way smarter than me. I just woke up and was thinking, when am I going to get a stay? I was looking at my schedule in the next several days, and then I realized, actually, I could do Sunday, which seems kind of weird to actually, but it is possible. Okay. Well, let's keep that conversation going, and don't hesitate to reach out to me or to one of your engagement ministers out and about. So thank you for your work. Quick PPG. So our PPP, the Payroll Protection Program, big news is they're out of money. That doesn't mean that if you have an application in process that you won't get money. What it means is, I think when they put you in the queue, that they begin to allocate those funds. So what we hear from our bank, we haven't received our money yet, but we hear that loan documents are coming. And so, and we also know that Congress is working on another allocation. So keep working with your lender and don't be discouraged. Hang in there would be my advice, or encourage your lay leaders to keep working with your lender. And I did say the same thing to the presidents last night. Let's go around the horn with Synod staff. Let's see, who can I see first? I see Keith. Keith, do you want to say something real quick over and above what you already said?
I think I've howled enough. I think I better.
Okay. Okay. All right. Next, I see John Olson.
Yeah, nothing really new to report from First Call or candidacy. We continue to be doing some work. 2 of us, or 3 from candidacy, are going to be looking at Fund for Leader recipients this afternoon at 3 o'clock. Chris Eldridge, he's on here, and Becky Harrington. So we kind of keep moving forward with stuff. Still, our big day of candidacy interviews is June 18, and we've got the word out to candidates that they might be interviewed through Zoom or in person. We're just going to still wait and see how that's going to look. So that's about it right now.
Thanks, John. Next, I see Brad.
Hey there. One of the things that I continue to work on is mobility and transition. We have a number of applications in Conference 7 that are in that process. So mobility and transition is still possible. And several congregations are continuing through that. Thanks to Pastor Janelle for blazing a bit of that trail, and my colleagues in doing that. So that's still ongoing. It looks different, of course, but we're still working on it.
Thanks, Brad. Speaking of Pastor Janelle, are you out there? I think you are. Well, we'll just move on to Kathy Levenhagen up in Lancaster.
Yeah, just still busy trying to locate pastors for churches, and some of that's kind of in a holding pattern as churches get their paperwork together and then learn that, you know, they too have to learn Zoom or some other kind of way to connect with one another and do those things. Otherwise, just trying to keep in touch with everybody and finding out if they have any prayer concerns and praying for those. So that's where we're at.
Thank you. Pastor Karen, are you out there? All right. Pastor Carla.
I don't have much new to report, just continue to work with congregations. We're doing background checks and we're helping congregations work through how to do a congregational meeting to call a pastor, and working on the Zoom calls for councils or call committees as they work through their materials. So.
Thank you. Let's see, did I miss one? Chris?
I don't really have anything new, but I've been getting in some questions.
Okay.
Privately and then to everybody. So I don't know if you want to start that. I can kind of.
Yeah, that's okay. The next thing.
One question, and I don't know if it got answered to the liking of the person who asked, but update on call processes and if there's interim pastors available.
Well, we have, yes, we have interim pastors. We're still working to line people up with interims. At any given moment, nearly all of our interims are committed somewhere, but then it's really becomes a game of musical chairs. So there are some interims coming to an end, and so people become available, and occasionally we get new possibilities for interims. So reach out to us. We'll continue to try to help with interims. And sometimes it's location specific. It's easier to find an interim in the Fargo-Moorhead area than it is up on the Canadian border. That's just a reality that you all know, so we might as well just say it. But that doesn't mean we won't try. So we will work to try.
Bill, could I just add something? We've got area mission strategies. We have 3 of them, and now in this pandemic time, shifted to Zoom to kind of keep the momentum going. But that does, it has suggested some potentialities maybe of trying on precise, sharing in ministry together and having an interim experience with a couple of congregations to kind of lean into that and see what is learned from that, that may have some lasting impact. So we're kind of thinking about interim opportunities for experiencing some different ways of doing ministry to see what that might, what fruit might be borne by that. And so we're noticing that, and I think we're also noticing that there probably opportunities and need for having more area strategies down the road where we can be attentive to interims, call processes, and how we might staff ministry together.
Thank you. Other questions?
Another question that I see is, what should we put in our May newsletters? Since that is going to be coming up soon, most churches are working on their May newsletter. So Bishop Bill, guidance on that?
So the what we're hearing from public health officials is that as we go back, it's going to be slow. lot slower than when we went in. I mean, we went from no restrictions to 250 to 50 to 10 to 0 in the space of 2.5 weeks. Coming out of this, it's going to be much slower, and it'll start with 10 and not on the high risk group. So to my mind, that rules out pretty much all of our congregations. Then we move to 20, 25 likely, and not on the high risk group. So if you think about congregations of 25 people, you and I both know what those look like. Those tend to be lots and lots of people in the high risk category. So most of us can't gather then. Then we move to 50. Probably a similar scenario. And so we are going to come out of this. This is not the new normal. There will be a time where we can gather again. I'm confident of that, and I think and that's what we're hearing. But we're going to get there slowly, and so I'm guessing that the guidance to provide in May newsletters is that we're in this place where we are until we're not anymore, until further notice, and we will work hard to inform people when it becomes possible for us to move out of this, and we will move out of it gradually. And our small congregations are at this point are going to have an advantage over our larger congregations. It'll be a long time before our congregations that worship more than 250 people can gather and worship unless they do it in shifts. And so we will be working on some guidance, which will be like practical pastoral kind of guidance for leaders to consider. Again, we can't force you to do anything, but we hope it'll be helpful. And we'll do that as we roll out of this, but it will be gradual.
Wanted to piggyback that. I'm not skipping you, Pastor Chris, but a question about outdoor services, if what you think about that impacting the social distancing, physical distancing.
So I know that lots of congregations are doing some kind of parking lot style where everyone stays in their cars. And there has been dispensation for that type of gathering. And I had expressed a concern about that in the past, that, what kind of a message does that send to neighbors? And I think you're going to be the best judge of that in your own community. Whether or not you feel that's a good public witness, maybe that your neighbors will be understanding of that they'll get it, that no, they're all staying in their car, no problem. But I think that's a pastoral, practical issue to think through. But gathering, like actually being outside, right now I wouldn't want to be. It's still not warm enough, but I know it will be in a few weeks, or at least cross your fingers. I'm not sure about that. I guess I want to do a little more research on that before I put an answer out there about whether or not that's advisable. Has anybody else heard anything?
It looks like Pastor Berkey found a PDF that she's going to forward to me, and I'll put in tomorrow's Northern Lights around outdoor gatherings and worship. So, yeah. And I think that's what the question kind of stemmed from the congregations that do outdoor worships when it's nice enough outside.
Yeah.
Kind of what I think the question was coming from. There's a question, backtracking a little bit, about from Pastor Chris Leach about the payroll protection. When does the 8-week time period start? I seem to remember it being said that we can wait to use the money without it starting immediately, and when we start the 8 weeks. So
it starts when you take the money. So that's one of the strategic decisions you have to make as leadership, is when will we take the money? If you had been contemplating some kind of a change in staffing already, you'll want to have made that change before you take the money, unless you're increasing your headcount. But if you had planned to decrease the headcount, that'll be the main stipulation as to whether or not the loan is forgivable.
There was a question about Synod Assembly. Bishop Bill, do you want to speak to
So the Synod, that decision will be made formally on Saturday. The Synod, we met as the Synod Assembly planning team. By the way, we were really excited about the assembly for this year. I think we just had some really cool stuff planned. So it was a little bit of grief around this. And believe me, if you'd have known me 10 years ago, for me to be saying that I was sad about not having a Synod Assembly would be crazy. But we were looking forward to that. And so the planning team offered two ideas or recommendations for the council to consider. One was a greatly abbreviated Synod Assembly in the fall, or that we would cancel Synod Assembly and instead perhaps hold some kind of a celebratory service when it's possible to do so in the fall, with the hope that that would be in the fall. Just a Sunday afternoon celebration that we can all get to and enjoy, being together, and have it kind of be an Easter in the fall sort of celebration. My recommendation to the Synod Council is going to be the latter, that we cancel and that we have some kind of a worship service. And the rationale for that is just kind of an appreciation for what your world is going to be like in the fall. All of your activities are getting postponed to the fall. So I'm guessing you're going to have a busy fall, and then there's all going to be, plus the matter of the delayed grief from the funerals that we'll be conducting in the summer and the fall. Those are all realities. And it feels to me that you don't need another day-long meeting. And our Synod Constitution allows that. Our Constitution requires that we meet at least every 3 years. And as far as terms of office, all of the terms of office clearly state that they end after some amount of time or when a successor is elected. So we can push those terms for 1 more year. So I'm thinking that's probably what we're going to do. We'll see. We'll see what the Synod Council says. They may have a different opinion on it, and if they do, I'll respect that and hear that. Other thoughts, questions?
There is one request, if you would be willing to write a little blurb for churches to put into their newsletter, kind of regarding my understanding regarding like the easing in sort of thing. Sure.
It's something I've been contemplating of late anyway. So we'll work on that as a staff on Wednesday and get something out.
And then there is a question about Bible camps and what they're up to. Yeah.
I've had some contact with Dave Holtz. I haven't had a lot of contact with folks at Pathways recently. I know that I can only imagine it's going to be a struggle. We will be in touch with them going forward. We are intentionally trying to schedule some things with our camps. So right now, the Fall Theological is on, and I believe the site that's been selected for that is Luther Crest Bible Camp. So yeah, we'll be looking into that and have more to report later. But those of you who know about outdoor ministry know losing a whole season of programming is pretty tough loss to take.
I believe I've gotten all of the questions that had come up in the chat. Mark Olson, Pastor Mark Olson, who's on the board, says the Pathways Board is meeting this Thursday. Yeah, so please keep us in the loop. Yes,
Will do.
Pastor Mark.
Oh.
And Bill, there's one question from Pastor Caitlin Jensen. They've been working on their form for the PP payroll protection program.
Yeah.
And I think this is on the Synod website, but I just want to double check. The financial counselor needs a letter from either the IRS approving tax exempt application or a letter from the ELCA stating that they fall under the group number. And that's in that resource, I believe, on the Synod website.
Yeah, you just send an email to 501c3@elca.org requesting a letter confirming your group exemption under the ELCA's group exemption. And normally that's a 1-day turnaround. As you can imagine, it's probably more like 3 to 5 days. But I've been told by ELCA's general counsel, Tom Cuniff, that it'll be no more than 5 days. So that's 501c3@elca.org, and you can obtain that letter. So I have a question before we head out. One is, we did a sermon. I did a sermon this last week for Easter too, and I heard from some folks that was helpful. I'm wondering how often it would be helpful to provide something like that. Every week is not a valid answer, but how helpful would, what would be a frequency that would be a rhythm that you feel like, and of course it's always optional whether you make use of it or not, but I'd just like to get a sense from you what you think.
I would say like every 6 weeks.
Every 6 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks. Okay. And once in a while, use the narrative lectionary.
Tom and I used it at Bethlehem Zion, at Bethlehem's radio broadcast on Sunday morning. It was, I think, generally well received. It gave another little perspective that we're not in this alone, and it was helpful.
Good. Well, okay, that's helpful feedback. Thank you. We'll continue to provide that, and perhaps even hear from other voices on occasion. But for a while, it'll be from me serving as your bishop and pastor for the synod. So, what about future topics for this call? What would be useful to continue to? What would you like to hear about? And you can send, go ahead.
I'd like to have more conversation about things we should be thinking about as we ease back into being in our buildings again, whenever that may be and whatever the numbers look like. Things like, how do we think about communion in safe ways? How do we, I'm sure there's a million questions that we need to think about as we move into the summer and the fall to get back in our building.
Okay. What else? The NFL draft is coming up. That seems like an important topic for, maybe not for everyone. All right. Well, go ahead.
This is Laurel in Detroit Lakes. I was talking to a friend of mine, Jana Kuntz. She's a pastor in North Dakota, and she's working right now with hospice in grief support, but she's written an article about supporting people who are grieving alone right now. And I've asked her to send me that article, but it might be nice to have her even come and just make a presentation to us. I'm sure I'm not the only one who has people in their congregations right now who are really going through this. Loved ones died, no funerals, and just the grief of job loss, all those things I think might be helpful.
Will you send that to us?
Yes, yes.
Thanks. Those are good ideas.
Bishop Steve Norby here. Say, besides agriculture, which is certainly huge, I've been talking to a few of the resort owners, and they're looking like at the Bible camps being wiped out for the whole summer, and it's pretty tough. So, and again, I just want to kind of keep in mind the resort people and those things that are going on.
Yeah, I know that's. If you think about our econ, when you think about the generosity that's happening, it's really remarkable when you think about the underpinnings of our economy in northwestern Minnesota. So we have agriculture, which just had one of its worst years on record, right? And then we have recreation and which is heading into, and tourism, which is heading into what will be probably its worst year on record. Education, which we know we've heard of cuts happening in education, and manufacturing, and we know how manufacturing is being impacted. So it's kind of a quadruple whammy, and yet we're managing, I think, to continue to find ways to be the church. So, but yeah, thanks for that. Well, we're past our time, and I want to be respectful of that. I did see the whole worship service, and yes, hopefully some of you got a chance to make use of that. I realize it's one you might not have offered anyway, so but just that make use of the vigil for Easter that we did. A few of us did. We had a lot of fun doing it, but hopefully you made use of it. And if not, check it out. It's still Easter. You can still celebrate it. But yeah, I like the idea of providing something, and we know of a resource that can help us with that, with regular leadership. So I'm going to ask someone who's right in the middle of my screen, and I hope this is okay. Pastor Ann Meredith, will you pray for us?
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, let us pray. Loving God, we thank you for this time together as your servants. May God bless everybody at the Synod who are working hard to help us. And all the pastors are reaching out to their own people and reaching people that maybe haven't gone to church for a long time, and that's a blessing, Lord. There are many worries about a severe recession, what's going to happen. And we just remind us, Lord, that you are walking with us. We may not always recognize it, but you are there. And for that, we give thanks. For all these things that are on our hearts that you know, Lord, we lift up in the name of your Son, Jesus, who's taught us to pray. Our Father,
who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name.
Thy
kingdom come.
Thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
I hear a member of your household takes the howling seriously. Yes.
He's like my nemesis.
We'll hear it. We'll hear that as a song of praise. Well, thanks everybody. God's peace be with you. Take care.